Hey everyone, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya, for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist and a furniture painter. So on this channel, I have both types of tutorials, watercolor painting and furniture painting. But tonight I'm going to be bringing to you a watercolor tutorial. And my coneflowers are starting to grow outside and they're looking big and beautiful, so I was inspired to paint them. And I wanted to just kind of simplify it for you so you don't have to be afraid to paint coneflowers. I'm just going to show you a simple, easy way to paint them. It's going to be a quick video, so I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so I've got my Arches watercolor paper, my Grumbacher brushes, a size 5 and a size 3. I've got my Winsor watercolors, and I also have my Arteza brush pens, watercolor brush pens. I'm not sure I'm going to be using those, but I have them right next to me if I'm going to, and I'll let you know if I do use them. Right now I don't think I'm going to. But I am going to start sketching my coneflowers. Okay, so I'm going to start with the little head of the coneflower, and then it's got these nice long petals that come right off it. And I've seen purple coneflowers, orange coneflowers, and like a fuchsia. I'm not sure that there are any other colors. There might be. I should probably Google it and see if there are. But I'm just sketching it out with a number 2 pencil, and I'm going lightly because I might erase some of my marks here. And they're kind of like teardrop petals. And I'm going to do it so that you can see the coneflower from the side, not from top down. And you can see kind of through their petals. It's not really, the coneflowers don't have like a lot of petals on them that you can't see through it. There's still like some space between them. So just leave a little space between them. And actually, I don't like that one, so I'm going to erase it. And I'm not going to erase it with my pink eraser because I don't want it to leave a mark, but I am going to use just a white eraser and lightly erase my mark here. And then you never want to take your hand and wipe away the eraser marks because your hands have grease on them, and you don't want that grease to get onto the onto your paper, because then your paint might not stick nicely. All right, so I am going to do another little mark here, and then another little mark there. And then they have nice long stems. And I think I'll do another one coming out like this. And then you can overlap the petals. That's totally fine. Actually, it's more interesting if you do overlap the petals. And I think that's about it right now. All right, let me just get rid of some of these eraser marks, or pencil marks. And you can also add more petals as you go. So I'm going to be starting with my number 5. And I am gonna pull in a little bit, what color is this? Violet, so it's the Winsor Violet. And you don't have to follow along with me with the same exact colors. If you don't have them, don't worry about it. But I am using violet in case you do have the Winsor Newton. You can pick any color you want. So I'm going to start by getting my petals wet. And then I'm just going to drop in a little bit of that violet. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker towards the middle of the flower. where the stem connects to the middle, and then I'm going to have it just bleed out so it's not as dark on the outside of the petal. So I'm going to do that again. I'm going to wet my petal, and then I'm going to take my violet and I'm going to drop it in right at the point where it meets the middle of the flower. And you can help it along. If it's not bleeding all the way through the petal, you can help it along a little bit and just let it bleed through. And then just keep going. And then you can also layer more colors later if you want to. Just let this dry and see how it looks to you first. And if you want to make some of your petals thinner or thicker at this point, you can definitely do that too. You can change up what you drew already. So far I'm just using the violet. And you can make some petals a little bit darker if you want to. They don't all have to be the same. And I'm going to drop a little bit more in the middle here while my petal's still wet, just to give it a little bit more punch. And if your petals are touching, they are going to bleed together. That's okay also. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, I do have 2 cups of water, one for cool colors and one for warm colors. So that way you're not running to the sink every 2 minutes to rinse out your cup. Now this one I went straight in with a little fuchsia. It gives it a little bit more of a pop. And here again, you can help it along. And if you liked the lighter petals, you could have just left it like that. If you wanted darker petals, then just keep adding more. Now these 2 petals are actually behind this flower, so that's why they look a little weird right now. That's looking really pretty. Okay, I'm going to continue on with my petals. I'm gonna let that dry before I add more colors, and I'm gonna go on to this flower. And this flower here, I think I'm gonna choose a little bit more of a pinky red. So I'm gonna move over to my alizarin crimson. But I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna wet the petals first. So this one's gonna be a little bit more Actually, I think I'm going to add a little yellow in there because I've seen some really pretty orange coneflowers. And let's go ahead and add a little bit of, I think this is cad yellow. There. I like that better. So I'm adding a little bit of cad yellow to the alizarin crimson. And you're gonna wanna make sure that these petals are dry before you overlap it or put them together, because then they're gonna bleed into each other. You don't want that. So just make sure that flower, that first flower is dry first before you do that. All right, and I'm going to help the paint along here a little bit. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit more of the crimson in here, just to give it a little bit more of a reddish tone where the petals meet the middle of the flower. I want it to be a little bit more red. All right, now we're gonna let those petals dry and we're gonna go back to the middle of this flower. Okay, so I'm gonna do more of a brown, I believe. Well, like kind of like a brownish purple, with the violet. So I think I'm gonna pull in some burnt sienna and a bit of my violet also and see what happens. And now the middle of the flower also has different tones to it. It's not just a solid color, and it's actually very, very spiky in the middle. So you do want to give it some texture. So I'm just going to be kind of going in a circular motion, but with little lines. And actually, maybe I should move over to my number 3. I think I'm going to move over to the number 3 brush for this. And it's okay if you have a little bit of the white paper still showing through. That just gives it a little bit more dimension, a little highlight. And then the very center of the flower is a little bit darker, so we'll darken that up in a minute. And you can go right over your petals, where the petals in the middle touch, you can go right over them a little bit. Okay, and so see how I left a little bit of the white showing? That gives it a little highlight. I think I am gonna go in with a little Payne's Gray though. So I wanna put a little bit of Payne's Gray in there also. So I am going to just tap the middle of the flower here and let it bleed into the burnt sienna. Just so it's darker here, but then it bleeds out a little bit. And then you can help it along a little bit also if you want. Looks really nice. I'm gonna let that dry before I give it another coat. So these are still wet also on this flower, so I think I'm gonna go ahead and start doing the stem. And I am gonna choose my Perm Sap Green. And I think I am going to choose a little bit of my my Payne's Gray as well. Oops, that was maybe a little too much Payne's Gray. So you can go how we did the petals at first was the wet on wet, and this is going to be wet on dry. I am not wetting my stem first, so this is called wet on dry. And you have a little bit more control over it like this. Versus the wet on wet, you don't have that much control over it. I'm gonna add a little bit of my Payne's Gray underneath the petal here for some shading. And I'm going to shade one side of my stem, so it looks like the light is coming from the right. Pretty. All right, so by now my petals are dry, so I'm going to go in and do the same thing to this flower in the middle that I did to this flower. So it's still that burnt sienna. And a little bit of that Payne's Gray. And here again, it's going to be wet on dry. And just start with your little line marks, because it's really, really spiky in the middle of this flower. That's where the seeds are, and it's just really spiky in there. so I'm gonna let that dry and I'm gonna go on to my other stem. And I'm going to add a little bit of that Payne's Gray again for shadowing on the left side. All right. So I'm going to go over my petals again. So right now it's just the fuchsia. So I'm going to go in with a little bit a brighter, a little bit more of a fuchsia and see, and I might add a little red to it. And you always want a highlighted side and a shadowed side. So I chose, since my stems are shadowed on the left, my petals are also going to be shadowed on the left. So it just looks like my light is coming from the right. So I'm just going in with the same color, the violet, and I'm just shadowing up the left side of my petals a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to blend that in a little bit, just so it mixes in with the rest of the petal. Just so you don't have a really harsh line right there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a little bit of the alizarin crimson that I had come in on this flower with. And I'm just going to deepen it up a little bit. And I'm deepening it up on the same side that I just did the violet. And I'm going to just do that to all the petals. Now it looks like it needs a few more petals in between, so I'm just going to make it look like there's petals behind these petals. So I'm just going to go ahead with the violet again. And I'm going to just kind of close up some of these negative. Just a little bit. And then you can kind of have a little bit of it peeking out down here if you want. So it looks like there's a petal behind that petal. And you can skip this step if you liked that it didn't look as solid of a look with the petals, and you liked it a little bit more airy. You don't have to do this part. But I'm going to go in with just a little bit here and just kind of close up that gap a little bit. There. So it looks like there's petals behind these petals. And actually, I'm going to add a little bit more here too. And maybe I'll have one coming out over here. And they could be a little bit lighter, so they're not as dark as your front petals. Just looks like they're kind of in the background. Okay, I'm going to let that dry now, and I am going to go over my petals on the orange flower. So I had chose the alizarin crimson and the cad yellow, and I'm gonna go in a little bit more with the alizarin crimson and do the same thing that I did on this one. And then here again, I think I'm gonna go in and make a couple petals behind these. So I'm gonna do more of the cad yellow mixture. So it's still got a little bit of the red in there, but it's more of the cad yellow mixture. And I'm gonna peek it through a little bit. So you can just pop it in right behind your petal, your front petals. So it just looks like there's some petals behind this one. Now coneflowers, like I said before, they don't have a ton of petals, so you really don't want to go too crazy with it. Really pretty. Okay, so now I'm going to touch up the middle again. So I had done the burnt sienna and the Payne's gray, so I'm just going to go ahead and deepen up some of my colors. So I'm going to start with the Payne's gray. No, I'm going to start with the burnt sienna, sorry. And I think I'm going to go straight out of the pan. And you might want to start filling in some of that white space with this. Because then it still looks like a highlight because it's not as dark as the Payne's gray, but you're toning down some of those whites. You don't have to cover all the whites, but you can cover some of them. All right, I'm gonna let that dry a minute, and I'm gonna go on to the next flower. So you're just deepening up your colors here. And remember, you want the middle to look textured because it's really spiky. Okay. All right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in with the Payne's gray again, straight out of the pan. And I'm still using my number 3. And I'm going to darken up the middle. And then I'm going to come out a little bit. And if you want it to be more of a crisp line, then wait for that burnt sienna to dry. And if you want the colors to blend in, then do it right away. So my burnt sienna is still wet, so they're kind of blending in a little bit. And I'm just going in and giving it texture. And also, like we did with the petals and the stem, where the left side is a little darker, you also want the middle of the flowers to be a little bit darker on the left side too, just so everything looks shadowed on the same side. Okay. And now I'm going to do the same thing to this flower. I'm going to start with the middle again and then work my way out. And my burnt sienna is still wet on this one too, so it's still blending in. But like I said, if you want more of a crisp line, then wait for the burnt sienna to dry and then do this part. And I still have a little bit of the white showing through. Just a little bit, not as much as before, but I still do have a little bit. And if you think once this is dry that it's still not dark enough, then go in again with a little bit more. And I think I'm going to shadow up my stems a little bit more. So it's definitely shadowed inside because the petals are covering it, and then as the stem goes down, it's going to be shadowed on the left side. And then this one, you don't even see the stem on the inside, so you're just going to go ahead and shadow it up. Especially under the petals, because the petals would be leaving a shadow mark. Those are so pretty. All right, I think what I'm going to do is add a little cad yellow just to give a little bit of a pop to the middle of my flowers. So on the highlighted side, I'm doing a little bit of cad yellow, just to brighten it up a little bit on that side. And I might bring this around a little bit, just towards the bottom of it. That's pretty. I think I also want to give a little bit of cad yellow to the the petals that are underneath of the orange flower, just to brighten it up a little bit. There. And if it's a little too bright for you, then just go over it with a clean, damp brush and just lift some of it off. And dab it off on your paper towel. Okay, I think I want to add a little bit more red to this first flower. Just on the shadowed side. And then if it's too stark of a line there for you, then just go ahead and blend it in with a damp brush. There you go. So that was a quick and easy watercolor. Also, I'm going to show you one more thing. I'm going to take a nice damp brush, a little bit bigger. I'm going to move to a size 12, and I'm going to get it nice and wet, and I think I want the orangier color in the background. So it's going to be really, really saturated, and then you can leave some marks. So what you're going to do is you're going to tap it. So this brush has got that nice saturated orangey color I had made, and then you're just going to tap it and leave some marks. And you can do as many marks as you want. Just grab some more And there you go. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And I am going to be bringing to you 2 videos a week from now on. I'm going to challenge myself. One on furniture painting and one on watercolors, so stay tuned for that. And if you like the video, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Have a great day. Bye.